The investigation team found their tent, but it was torn. The fabric of the tent had been torn from the inside because its threads were sticking out. It was seen that the hikers inside had torn the tent and fled in fear. Some footprints were also seen. Shoes and barefoot marks were on the snow. The hiker's camera and some strange photographs in it were also found. But despite entire criminal investigation entry of every day in the register and photographs, this case could not be solved till date. This is the story of Mountain of the Dead, and this accident is remembered as Dyatlov Pass Incident, viewers. On the morning of January 23, 1959, a 10-member hiking team caught a train and set out for Siberia's Ural mountain range. There were 8 boys and 2 girls in this group, in which Igor Dyatlov was their group leader. He kept a register with him in which moment by moment everything was being written. During the train journey, the group leader Dyatlov made an entry in the register which translate to, "I wonder what awaits us into this trip. What will we encounter?" For the next few days, the group traveled by train, bus, truck, and horse, and eventually began to advance on foot and on their skis. On January 28th, a hiker named Yuri Yudin became ill and decided to turn back. While the remaining 9 hikers continued with the plan, these are the photos of the moment when Yuri was separated from his 9 companions. But he didn't know that today he is seeing them for the last time. The group of 9 continued their journey into the snowy valleys and began documenting all the moments using diaries as well as cameras. The photos found and what was written in the register entries still looked completely normal. On the 1st of February, they reached the bottom of a mountain known by the locals as the Mountain of Dead. They spent the whole day climbing this mountain and finally decided to camp a few meters before the top of the mountain. These are the last few pictures that came from his camera, and at the same time the translation of what was written in the register is as follows: "Can't imagine such comfort, on the ridge with a sharp wind, hundreds of kilometers away from any human settlement." Everything that happened till was then found written in the register, but no one knows what happened after that. It took him a total of 16 days in this trip. He left behind telling his friends and family members that they would come back down and report his well-being by telegraph. Worry was increasing for relatives and friends as even after 16 days, 15 days had already passed, but there was no news of the group leader Dyatlov or any group member. Eventually, a group of volunteers was formed on February 26th, and they managed to locate the lost hikers' camp on the mountain slope. Seeing this camp, it was not difficult to guess that something horribly wrong must have happened here. The tent was covered with a thin layer of ice, and inside the tent, hikers' luggage was perfectly safe, but the tent's cloth was torn from the inside with the help of a knife. It seems that something went wrong inside the tent, which forced them to tear the tent and run away. The next day, a search for hikers began, with some footprints marks on the snow near the opening of the torn tent. Some of the footprints that were going down the mountain were of shoes, and some of bare feet. The footprints marks were on the snow for about 500 meters, but then they disappeared somewhere. Perhaps later snow covered it up. The investigation team proceeded in the direction of these footprints, and after a while, they reached Siberian pine tree. Here they found traces of a bone fire, as well as the frozen dead bodies of Yuri Krivonyshenko and Yuri Doroshenko. It took the next 2 months to find the bodies of the 9 hikers, the first 2 hikers wearing very little cloths. There were no jackets, no pants, no gloves, no hats, no shoes, nor did they wear anything that could protect them from the cold. They were wearing only light shirts and underpants. When weather archives were observed in it, and it was found that when he died, the temperature here was around minus 30 degrees Celsius. But their clothes were like those worn in summer season, but why was it like that? Some strange marks were also found on the nearby pine tree. Its branches were broken up to 5 meters, as if they had tried to climb it in the dark night to save their lives. The bodies of the next hikers were also found lying in the snow between the tent and the pine tree. The direction of these 3 hikers was towards the tent, as if they were going from the forest below to the tent above. but in the middle, they gave up and died. Some injury marks were found on their bodies, but the doctors declared hypothermia as the cause of their death. That is, the condition in which all the heat of the body is lost due to being in the cold for a long time. The bodies of the last 4 hikers were found under a rock in the forest. 3 of them suffered deep injuries. 1 had a fractured head, and 2 had broken ribs. The medical examiner stated that such injuries could not have been caused by a human or animal attack, and believed that they had fallen from a height. The animal attack got its name because 2 of the hikers had no eyes, and the girl had no tongue. The most surprising thing was that 2 t-shirts and 1 pair of pants found at the crime scene had radioactive material on them. At first, an investigation was being conducted under the assumption that someone might have killed them, but on May 28th, this case was closed as there was no evidence to show that they were murdered, or they killed each other among themselves. So what happened to these 9 people? According to the official report, 6 of the 9 hikers died of hypothermia. But their condition made it difficult to believe that they had died of cold weather, means hypothermia. Till now, this case was getting international coverage. Family members of hikers and many others began to speak out against the Soviet Union's hypothermia story. He believed that the Soviet government was covering up the hikers' deaths to hide the real cause. Especially when radioactive particles was found from the t-shirts of 3 hikers, all thoughts turned to nuclear test. It was the era of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. People believed that the Soviet Union secretly conducted a nuclear test on this mountain. And due to radiation of nuclear tests, 9 hikers died, and now they want to dismiss the case by citing hypothermia as the cause. The investigation team was looking at the case from different angles. At one point, avalanche may also have been declared cause for the accident. Maybe they sensed Iwanet outside in the night, so all the left tent and ran away. But then the matter was also sidelined because if the avalanche had occurred, the thin layer of snow that covered the tent would have been a very thick layer. More than 100 expeditions have been conducted since the accident, but no one has observed conditions that could have created an avalanche. Yes, dangerous conditions have been experienced on this mountain, that too in the months of April and May because the snow is melting then, whereas these 9 hikers went in February when there were no such conditions. Here is the latest photo taken by a hiker's camera taken on the night of the accident. It appears to be a photo of a light that was not properly focused by the camera lens in the dark. Due to this photo, new theories started to be born. Some people believe that it is a photo of an unidentified flying object in the sky. Some said that it is a photo of an emergency light or candle light on top of a tent. One thing is clear, that whatever this is a photo of, whether it is a rocket, a UFO, or meteorite, that object did not fall near them, because there were no traces of any crash. The real truth of this last photo was never revealed, so our real question is still there. What is the real truth behind the Dyatlov Pass accident? To find out the truth, we turn to the tent, which is actually the first link in the chain. In the photo from a couple of nights ago, there is an exhaust pipe coming out of the tent. The exhaust pipe and the stove inside the tent were made by leader Igor Dyatlov himself. They also used that stove on the night of the accident because cooked food was also found inside the tent. The fire may have been accidentally reignited due to the burning coals left behind when the exhaust pipe was closed. When the tent was found, it did not have an exhaust pipe, which means that if there was a fire, the smoke would have accumulated inside instead of going out. The hikers inside the tent began to suffocate. This is one reason that is understandable, that they could not bear the smoke inside the tent and torn the tent and left it immediately. There is also evidence to prove this theory, as burn marks have also been found on the body and clothing of hikers, and some had blood coming out of their mouths. After getting out, they started walking slowly and looking for shelter. Some of the hikers left the tent without warm clothes. So they went down to the forest and started a bonfire. the burning coals of which were found by the investigation team near the pine tree. Hikers who were more clothed went a little further down in forest to find firewood. There, a small avalanche came down on them from the rock due to which they fall into the rocks below. Due to the fall from the rock, they suffered severe head injuries, fractured ribs, and internal bleeding in the chest. 2 hikers who were wearing scantily clad clothes were right next to the pine tree. The remaining 3 hikers climbed back to tent, were exhausted and frozen there, while 2 hikers sitting by the bonfire were also frozen and died due to the extinguished fire. Speaking of radioactive particles, let me tell you that everything is radioactive to some extent, but these clothes were more radioactive than necessary. A member of the group, Alexander Kolovatov, worked at a nuclear factory, and Yuri Krivonishenko worked at a top-secret Soviet Union nuclear production plant. The radioactive cloths found belonged to these 2 hikers, while remaining hikers. Cloths contain normal amounts of radioactive elements, and hikers with missing body parts may have been attacked by wild animals when they were injured. It has been 65 years since the accident. Out of the 10-member group, Yuri Yudin was the only member who left the expedition due to illness. He died at the age of 76 years on 27 April 2013. Hope you will like this video. Subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.